Well, this was not your usual PMQs here at Westminster today. Gone was the usual partisan, raucous, knockabout stuff that usually characterises the lunchtime session here at Parliament. Instead, the key word of the day was collaboration and collegiate. Keir Starmer, the Labour leader, and Boris Johnson using that word several times as MPs are still really coming to terms with the terrible killing of one of their own, Sir David Amess, last Friday in that terrible attack in his Southend constituency. So the tone to PMQs today was very different. And what Keir Starmer tried to do was to try and get the Prime Minister to toughen up the online safety bill, which is going through Parliament at the moment, has already been dubbed by some MPs as David's Law.
It's 3 years since the government promised an online safety bill, but it's not yet before the House. Meanwhile, the damage caused by harmful content online is worse than ever.
This is the piece of legislation that is supposed to make it much harder for social media to be used by people for online abuse, for extremist content, for child abuse. And it has been very slow, Labour say, in going through Parliament. They want it to be speeded up. So two things came out of that today. Keir Starmer asked the Prime Minister Boris Johnson for a commitment that it would come back before the House of Commons before Christmas. Boris Johnson seemed to give that commitment.
The safety of MPs, indeed of all public servants, everybody who engages with the public, is of vital importance, and the online safety bill is of huge importance too. It's one of the most important tools in our armoury.
But more significantly, he asked for the government to toughen up measures which would leave social media executives, tech executives, facing criminal sanctions if they do not deal with harmful content published on their platforms. On that, Johnson seemed to give a commitment. Labour certainly think that he gave a commitment to that, but at the moment that is not in the bill. It is deferred as a measure that could be introduced later if the tech companies do not sort of respond well to this new piece of legislation, which really requires them to police their own platforms much more tightly under the guise of the media regulator Ofcom.
We will continue to look at ways in which we can toughen up those provisions and to come down hard on those who irresponsibly allow dangerous and extremist content to permeate the internet. But, Mr. Speaker, I'm delighted that he's taking this new tough line, and I very much hope that he will get the rest of his party in the lobbies with us to join him.
What was perhaps even more striking about Prime Minister's questions was the complete absence of any discussion about COVID. Now, it's the big story of the day, completely dominated the media broadcast round. It's the front page story of the Standard this evening, and that is ministers at the moment rejecting calls for to implement Plan B. Now, you remember Plan B has been held back by the government as a series of measures that could be introduced if hospitals get overwhelmed by COVID cases and other winter viruses in the coming weeks. That would mean the reintroduction of mandatory face mask wearing in indoor spaces, crowded spaces. It would mean perhaps compulsory vaccination certification for entry into venues, and it would mean more working from home. At the moment, the government is determined not to introduce any of that because they don't want to do any further damage to the economy, and they're absolutely determined not to have a repeat of last Christmas when people were facing very much tougher restrictions. But you just sense there is something changing here. Yesterday, the UK recorded the highest number of daily deaths since March. The case numbers remain stubbornly high. For the last 4 days, they've been above 40,000. And you just feel that we are at a moment where the messaging on this may be about to get much tougher.